everyone. My name is Rebecca Lewis. I am a registered dietitian in beautiful sunny California. This is my sous chef today, Charlie. He is always really interested in what I'm doing in the kitchen. And today I'm so excited to be working with Tomato Wellness. We are going to be using some delicious canned tomatoes, and we are going to be making a chicken paprikash meal. I really love chicken paprikash because it uses basic ingredients that you typically always have in your pantry on hand. So if you're going to cook this recipe with me today, what you're going to need is canned tomatoes. I used crushed tomatoes. And when you're buying your tomatoes, look at the can when you're in the store. You know, we want to promote all the products that are made here in the United States. So there's no need to go and get expensive Italian tomatoes. You can always get the tomatoes that are grown right here in the US and support our local domestic farmers. My family is actually in agriculture. They grow nuts and citrus in California, so I'm always mindful to thank a farmer. All right, so we're going to need the canned tomatoes. We're going to need some onion. I will show you how to dice this up. I've already done some. We're going to also need some garlic cloves, if you have those at home, or you can just use minced garlic if you don't want to go through the process of chopping it yourself. We're making chicken paprikash, so you're of course going to need some paprika. Little known fact, I didn't even realize this today until I looked it up, but paprika is the fourth most used spice in the world. So right behind salt, pepper, and garlic, paprika is a very commonly used spice, and most people have this in their spice cabinet. If you want your paprikash to have a little bit more heat to it, you can also add some cayenne pepper. The kids in my house don't like spicy food, so I'll be omitting that ingredient. You can always use a little bit of that if you have it at home. You're going to want to get chicken thighs, and you're going to want to get them bone-in, skin on. I'm going to show you how to get really crispy skin on your chicken. You're going to need a little bit of either sour cream or as a healthy alternative, I like to use full-fat Greek yogurt. And then salt and pepper. And if you are going to be serving this meal, I like to finish it with egg noodles and a little bit of parsley. And if you do that, you'll want to get the egg noodles nice and silky, use a little bit of butter. So I think that's everything that you need for this recipe. Like I said, really basic ingredients. This is going to be pretty simple. Step one, make sure you get your oven preheated to 300 degrees. We're going to start the chicken on the stove top, but we're going to finish everything in the oven. So go ahead and get the oven preheated now so we won't have to worry about that later. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with the chicken thighs. So really important tip to get crispy skin on your meat, whether it's chicken or even if you're making steak or fish or anything and you want to get that nice sear, you do need to bring the meat so that the temperature is the same on the inside of the meat as the outside of the meat. That's how you prevent it from burning. And then what you're going to want to do is get some paper towels, and I'm going to move the camera down so you can see what I'm doing here. You're going to want to pat the chicken down. You want to really make sure it's nice and dry. You don't want to have all the blood or any juices on the chicken. That way, when you put it in the pan, it's going to sear up real nice. So just make sure you give that a nice pat. Get everything really nice and dried out. Wash my hands over here. Okay, and then what we're going to do next is we're going to season these, and you do want to season them on both sides. So we're going to do a little bit of just basic salt and pepper. And I want to get both sides of the chicken thighs. Just get that nice and seasoned up so it has a little bit of flavor. Okay, And then once we're done seasoning these, what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna get our pan really nice and hot. So you can use straight oil in your pan. You can also use butter. Butter is a saturated fat, but we're not using that much, about a tablespoon. If you use your oil, you're gonna get your plant-based source of fat, which is a little bit more heart healthy, but hey, we're not using all that much, so whatever you have in your pantry at home, either one will work. You're gonna get your pan nice and hot. While the pan is hot and the oil is dispersing and the butter is melting, once you feel like it's nice and hot, you're gonna wanna get your chicken thighs that you just seasoned, and you're gonna want to put them skin side down. And when you place them in the pan, you should hear a sizzle. You should hear the which is kind of like the kitchen cheering you on, letting you know you're doing a good job. But you do want to hear that. That's how you know that the pan is hot enough. That's how you're going to get that nice sear. Now, I already went ahead, magic of making these already ahead of time. I went ahead and did my chicken thighs so that you don't have to watch me sear these. But basically, I left them skin side down in the pan for about 8 minutes or so. We don't need to cook these all the way through because we are going to finish them in the oven, but I just want to let you guys see how nice and crispy the skin got on these. So we're going to set this aside. And the next step, while the chicken is cooking in the pan, if you guys are following along with me, you're going to want to cut up your onion and your garlic. So I already started dicing up my onion. I just wanted to give a couple tips when you are working with onions. They're round and they roll all around, and that's when you can accidentally have something bad happen. So what you want to do is you want to get your onions in a nice flat shape so they don't roll. And we're going to use what I call a claw grip. So you're going to make your hands into a little C, or like a claw. And when you are slicing, that way, with your hands pulled back, you can't actually cut your fingers. So I'm just gonna show you here. And as I move my fingers back, my knuckles are what are bumping up against the knife. That way I don't accidentally cut myself. Now, you don't need to have professional knife skills to make this exciting or to have a good dish. Really, what you're trying to do with your onions is you want them to all be about the same dice size, so that they cook at the same rate. If you have some really big pieces and some little pieces, then they won't cook at the same rate, and some will be more cooked than others. So really, don't worry about perfection. Cooking should be fun. You should be having a good time in the kitchen, and it's just about trying to get roughly the same size across the board with the size of the onions as you're chopping them up. So I used one whole onion. I like the red onions. I like the flavor that they give. You could also use a white onion, or you could use a yellow onion, whatever you have in the house. Onions are one of those great things right now, especially as we are all going through quarantine. They are protective against illness, and they help boost your immunity. I mean, when you're cutting an onion and it's making you cry, just think about what that's doing to the inside of your body. So we have our onions nice and chopped up. I have about 4 cloves of garlic here. I just wanted to show you guys a really simple technique that I use. You have your garlic cloves, and what you can do is take the knife and just put the flat side down, and you can give it a little smack, and that smashes the garlic. I can show that to you. And that just makes it so much easier to peel the garlic. Okay, so we're going to get that garlic nice and chopped up now. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. We're just looking for a uniform size so that everything cooks at about the same rate. Okay, now you would normally be doing this while your chicken is cooking on the stove, and I already finished my chicken, so we're just going to get started on the next step, which is we're going to add the onions and the garlic to a saute pan. And you want to select a saute pan, preferably that can go from the stove top to the oven. And the reason for that is you don't want to pick a pan that has any kind of plastic on it a rubber. It will melt in the oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all this beautiful garlic that we just chopped up, just a nice rough chop, and all the onions, and I'm going to move my computer over to the stovetop. Give me just a moment here. Okay, here we go. Woo! Okay, so I want to be able to show you what I'm doing in the pan, so I'm going to angle this down so you can see it. Hopefully the lighting cooperates. I'm going to get my pan nice and hot. We're going to go about a medium-high heat. Now, when you cooked the chicken, you'll have a little bit of chicken fat that's left in the pan. You can certainly pour that all off and again just go straight to olive oil. But if you want to leave a little bit of the remnants from the chicken fat in the pan and use that to cook your onions and your garlic, you can certainly do that as well. So I'm going to add in my onions and garlic. I'm going to give them a nice stir, coat them in a little bit of the fat from the chicken thighs. And I didn't have a lot of fat come off of mine, so I am going to add a little bit of olive oil. And we're just going to let these aromatics cook up and start releasing their delicious aroma. To me, there's nothing that smells more like home than onions and garlic cooking on the stovetop. So we're just going to let those guys sit there for a minute, and I'm going to take you back and we're going to talk a little bit about tomatoes. So many of you may have the joy of having other people in the home that you cook for, and sometimes you get that question, what's for dinner? And it stresses you out because you've been through all of your normal meals that you make over and over on repeat. And you just want to make something a little different, a little bit more exciting. And I like this chicken paprikash dish. It uses a spice that's commonly used in the world, but it gives such a great flavor to the dish that we're going to do today. And an important part of making a nice sauce to go with these crispy chicken thighs is going to be canned tomatoes. So I know that a lot of us like to eat fresh tomatoes. They're not in season year-round. We know this because if you've ever bitten into a tomato out of season, it just doesn't have that great tomato flavor, the smell, the taste. It's not ready to be eaten yet. And if you are eating tomatoes in January that are fresh, you're probably getting them from someplace outside of the United States, which means they were probably picked too early. So I like to have canned tomatoes in my home at all times. I use canned tomatoes so many ways. I use them for sauces, pastas, curries, this chicken paprikash dish. They're just so great to have. And tomatoes, they come in a lot of different ways too. You can get them diced, crushed, pureed. You can get tomato paste. There's a lot of different uses for the different types of canned tomatoes. And what I really like about tomatoes, for all the ladies and the gentlemen out there too, tomatoes contain a nutrient called lycopene. And lycopene is something that is very, very beneficial for your skin. It makes your skin look glowy and beautiful. And when you eat a fresh tomato, there's lycopene in it, but it's harder for your body to absorb the lycopene. You actually need to cook the tomato in order for that lycopene to come out. And so when you're using canned tomatoes, what you're getting is a more bioavailable lycopene to make your skin look good. And we all like to look good, even if we are still in quarantine. Canned tomatoes also have an excellent source of vitamin C. You're going to get more of that vitamin C in the cooked tomatoes as well. So just a great pantry staple to always have on hand. Today, I'm using crushed tomatoes, made in the U.S. Love them, and I think it's going to give this dish a nice saucy, flavorful with the paprika profile that's just going to be something a little different. Now, I did want to say, I forgot to say this earlier, we're going to be finishing the dish with a little bit of either sour cream or full-fat Greek yogurt. You do want to make sure you pull this out. You want it to come to room temperature. When you add the sour cream or the yogurt to the acidic tomato, what's going to happen if you're not careful and it's too cold, it will curdle. So just make sure you pull this out when you preheat the oven and make sure it comes to room temperature. It'll make the dish silky smooth later on. Let's go back to the onions that are cooking, and I'm going to add in the paprika, get those spices going, and I'm going to add in the tomatoes. So let me just move on over here. Okay. So our onions and garlic are cooking down nicely. Little tip in the kitchen, when you're cooking, you do want to make sure that you give the food in the pan time to cook. It's really tempting to keep stirring and stirring and stirring, but if you don't let the food touch the hot pan, it can't actually cook all the way through. So next step, I'm going to add in my paprika. I have about 3 tablespoons here. And again, if you wanted your your paprikash to be a little bit spicier, you could always add in a little dash of cayenne pepper, but we're going to keep it pretty mild in the household here. Paprika is an interesting spice. It's a Hungarian spice, and there are different kinds of paprika. There's sweeter paprika, there's spicier paprika. Basically, paprika comes from a pepper, and it's dried and ground. Sometimes the pepper is smoked, and that's how you get that smoky paprika flavor. So you want to be careful once you get the spices in there. The spices can burn. So you want to lower the heat down to about a medium from a medium high. And once you start to smell everything, it smells really good in the kitchen right now. What you're going to do next is you're going to add in your tomatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in now. And I'm also going to add from the can about a half a can of water just to make sure I get this sauce nice and saucy. We're going to finish in the oven, and I don't want it to be so thick that we don't have a sauce. So let me go get that. Okay, so I'm adding in about half a cup or a half a can of water. Okay, so we're just going to get that mixed up real nice. It really does smell so good in the kitchen right now. It's one of the fun parts about cooking is you get that immediate satisfaction of making something that smells good, you know is going to taste good. You're cooking at home, so you know the quality of all the ingredients that you're putting in. All right, guys, so the next step is going to be to add in the chicken thighs that we started earlier. So here they are, those beautiful chicken thighs, and I'm just going to place them right into the sauce. You can see this nice crispy skin. You want to keep the skin side up. You don't want to cover the chicken thighs with the sauce. You just kind of want to let the bottom part soak in. And again, we talked earlier about not worrying necessarily about the chicken thighs being fully cooked. Again, we are going to be finishing these in the oven. Okay, so you can see the pan has everything going. I'm on about a medium heat. I'm just going to let these sit for just a moment in the sauce. I'm going to make sure my oven is at 300, and then I'm going to pop those in there. So let's move on back where you can see me, so it's not so dark over here. Okay, so we're just going to give that a minute, and then I'm going to put it right in the oven. It's going to stay in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. It depends on the size of the chicken thighs you bought. If they're really thick, you'll need a longer cook time. And if they're a little bit thinner, then you'll just need a shorter cook time. So 30 to 40 minutes. Basically, if the meat's starting to fall off the bone, you know it's good. Now, to finish this dish off, one of the things that I like to do, and you can completely change this up to whatever works for the diet that you're following at the moment, but I really like to use egg noodles. They're really silky and beautiful. If you're not eating wheat, you could also do zucchini noodles. I think it tastes great over zucchini noodles as well. But the important final ingredient, and I'm not gonna be able to show you this because we don't want to sit on camera for 30 minutes waiting for it to finish in the oven. But what you'll do is, this is about a half a cup of Greek yogurt or sour cream, whatever you have at home. And again, making sure it's at room temperature. You're gonna mix this into the sauce. And that's gonna give that really silky texture over the egg noodles or the zucchini noodles. So let's get the chicken in the oven. Okay, so the chicken is in the oven. It's gonna sit there about 30 minutes and it's gonna be delicious. So that's chicken paprikash. That's how quick, that's how simple, how easy, nothing out of the ordinary. They're basic ingredients, really tasty. And I hope that your family likes it as much as my family does. If you have any questions about the dish, definitely put your questions in the comments and we'll get back to you. We'll answer them. I hope that you learned something new today about canned tomatoes, the vitamin C, the lycopene, the deliciousness of paprika, and I hope this is a dish that you'll try at home. So until the next time, guys, get out there and get cooking and have some fun in the kitchen.